Today we shall be taking a look at two of the most common yet surprisingly popular Micro Four Thirds kit lenses out there. The premium looking Lumix 14 to 45mm and the stealthy and intriguing Lumix 12 to 32mm pancake. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So build quality is actually exceptional in both these lenses, though I would give credit to the Panasonic Lumix 14 to 45. It does have a better action, it is very well assembled, it does have a metal lens mount as compared to the later generations of the 12 to 32, which offer only a plastic mount. And well, overall, I don't know, the design is a bit stealthy yet intriguing. It is actually a step above the 12 to 32 kit lens, which, although functions correctly, is a bit flimsy and it doesn't really offer or inspire the same feeling of solidity and premium build quality as the 14 to 45. However, you only need to look at DSLR lens from 20 years ago to understand the huge leaps in terms of material and build quality when it comes to mirrorless lenses and Micro Four Thirds lenses in particular. The differences are actually astonishing, both in dimensions and material usage. However, I am certain you clicked on my video to see how these two lenses perform, and as such I have devised a small plan in order to test them properly. I shall attach them to my Lumix GX800 pocket camera and perform a couple of shots in wide conditions, zoom conditions, macro shots, a few low light conditions, and some video samples in order to establish whether these lenses actually offer correct image stabilization or not. So I guess it's time to take them out on the road. So then, some results and conclusions for the test. Wide angle shots were actually better performed by the Lumix 12 to 32 as opposed to the Lumix 14 to 45mm. On the one hand, both of the lenses provided distortion-free photos, no warping at the corners, and correct lighting and coloring. On the other hand, the details on the 12 to 32 are much crisper, and that could be just the fact that while the optical image stabilization is actually a step above compared to the Lumix 14 to 45, and that shall be evident all throughout this little test. Now, in terms of close-ups, I believe there is no distinguishable characteristic, any discerning fact that would put one lens above the other, but I invite you to check out the photos and, well, take your own conclusions on this matter. In terms of macro attempts, however, things begin to shift in favor of the 14 to 45mm, at least in my opinion. And this is where I saw a better handling of the bokeh effect, the subject separation in correct lighting conditions. Also, I liked the focusing better when I took the photos with the 14 to 45. It seems that the Lumix GX800 did not struggle all that much with the lavender subject here when it comes to focusing different parts of the photo and different parts of the subject. This was a bit of a downer for the 12 to 32 in terms of macro attempts and correct focusing and subject separation. Now, in terms of zoom, there is no real competition. It is clear that the 14 to 45mm has a bigger zoom output as compared to the petite pancake 12 to 32mm. On the video side, however, this is where the 12 to 32 millimeter came back with a punch and actually, in my opinion, outperformed the sort of outdated Lumix 14 to 45 millimeter, and that is naturally due to newer technology in terms of stabilization and, well, a bit better packaging or a bit better handling. It might just be the fact that the camera is lighter in hand and it's easier to stabilize, given the fact that the Lumix GX800, with which I have taken the sample videos, does not really offer IBIS in its body. And the same results are evident in the low light, or I should say lower light, more challenging lighting conditions up in my attic, where I keep a lot of junk, and while there's a lot of detail to be captured and a lot of challenges in terms of focusing and subject separation, these lenses do not perform well when lighting is not symmetrical and is actually absent. So here I have found that the Lumix 12 to 32 managed the focusing a lot better than the Lumix 14 to 45, and most of my shots with the Lumix 12 to 32 hit the correct focusing mark compared to the 14 to 45 millimeter. Now, the reason I say all these shots are autofocus is because, in fact, the Lumix 12 to 32 millimeter pancake lens does not actually have a physical focus ring in order to adjust the focus, like on the Lumix 14 to 45 millimeter, which has two rings, one for the zoom adjustment and another for the focus adjustment. However, you can perform these tasks from the camera, and, well, even though a bit more finicky, it should do the job in more static environments where speed is not an issue. And, well, there is one last point I need to touch upon. It's the pricing. Even though these are bottom market units and do not really offer any performance of advances in 2026, these lenses are still sought after and, well, really appreciated by hobbyists and, well, budget-conscious buyers such as myself. Now, the Lumix 14 to 45 is at around the €100 mark, though it is getting more expensive each passing week. That is due to the fact that they are becoming rare, and people seem to appreciate the build quality and the sturdiness that they offer. On the other hand, the Lumix 12 to 32 is the ideal pocket rocket when it comes to street photography and, well, ease of use, accessibility, space saving gear, and so on. In just a few moves, you simply turn the camera on, rotate the zoom ring, and you are good to go. And that is actually an exquisite and beautiful action for what is a moderately expensive lens at about €150, a good performer with a swift action, pleasing construction, and acceptable overall performance. Can I declare a winner between these two lenses? Well, in terms of performance, of course I can. It's a clear win for the Lumix 12 to 32 and a close second for the Lumix 14 to 45 millimeter. However, given their age and their performance output in 2026, I don't really think this point is actually relevant. You can pick either one. The interesting thing to note is you should pick the Lumix 12 to 32 if you want something pocketable, easy to use, fairly robust and accessible in terms of street photography, city breaks and quick escapades which require light gear, like traveling to your destination by plane where space and weight is actually an issue. On the other hand, if you want the sturdy but accessible variant, there's no real competition. The Lumix 14 to 45 is actually the overall better performer, not compared necessarily to the 12 to 32, but rather to the subsequent versions of the Lumix kit lenses, the 14 to 42, Mark 1 and Mark 2 series, which actually don't really offer neither the build quality nor the performance. In the meantime, remember, I buy, hoard and collect weird and quirky obsolete tech stuff like this series of Panasonic Lumix cameras and lenses, so you don't have to. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye!